In our Faith in America segment this week, first it was parents at school board meetings. Now the FBI targeting and monitoring Catholics, suggesting conservative Catholics could be dangerous extremists. A leaked memo from the Department of Justice also suggests the need to actually recruit agents to infiltrate Catholic churches and organizations to surveil possible extremist activity. Joining us now, the man who exposed the shocking document, former FBI special agent and federal whistleblower, and the host of the Kyle Seraphin Show, Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, thank you so much. This is, I'm a Catholic. The viewers, I'm sure, know that. But then this is the type of stuff that smacks of communist China. This is what they do in communist China. They infiltrate churches and then report back to the government about the message and about the organization and what's going on there. Tell us what's in the memo.
By an intelligence analyst out of the Richmond field office. Interestingly enough, I actually disclosed the parents at school board meetings memo too. So this is 2 for 2 with me on hitting close to home, because I'm both a parent and a Catholic. And what this analyst was saying essentially is that there's a very likely common cause between white supremacists and radical traditional Catholics or trad Catholics, and that they should use mitigation techniques as possible, which would include source recruitment inside the church. That's a no-go for me. That is not acceptable, and it was not acceptable to the person who brought it to my attention within the FBI. There are a number of whistleblowers that are working within. I'm sure the Bureau is happy to find that out, but we're going to just keep exposing things. It's one at a time. It's only the things that we have visibility to. But it's obviously a big concern when you're talking about a religion that has 70 million adherents in this country alone.
Yeah, one of the nation's largest Catholic advocacy organizations issued a statement yesterday slamming the FBI over this behavior. Brian Birch, the president of Catholic Vote, said, quote, "The recent leaked FBI memo on the targeting of Catholics represents an outrageous escalation in the weaponization of the federal government against religious believers. Further, the growing pattern of hostility toward Catholics by the Biden administration, from its failure to properly address violence against Catholic churches to the relentless persecution of innocent pro-life advocates, deserves far more scrutiny by Congress." And he says we need answers. There needs to be some action here. The FBI, one of the other things that I found very interesting about this is the FBI actually uses the Southern Poverty Law Center as their source for suggesting that Catholics who, for instance, pray the rosary in groups or attend the Latin Mass or wear rosary beads are a dangerous threat. DOJ is taking direction from the Southern Poverty Law Center, which has been called a hate group. Talk to me about that.
Well, it's actually not an approved source for FBI intelligence products. That was briefed as far back as when I was at Quantico. That was 6 years ago. And I'm told by people that work in that community that it actually goes back further. The reason is that the Southern Poverty Law Center is a pretty radical leftist organization. It's not a reputable source. And unless you have a, sort of a balancing source, it should have never actually made it into an intelligence product by anybody. But what we are seeing is that the sort of the weaponization of the FBI also includes people who are ideological activists. So this particular document seems to have been written by somebody who's real problem was not with Catholics. It's with people that don't accept abortion rights and LGBTQ agendas being shoved down the American people's throats. And that's antithetical basically to all Christians. It's not just Catholics.
They also suggested, obviously, the need to recruit agents to infiltrate and monitor Catholics. You were in the Bureau. What ordinarily, when you recruit kind of undercover agents, what kind of groups, what kind of organizations are you really looking for?
It runs the whole gamut. So every FBI agent is actually required to keep sources on book, whether or not it makes sense for their type of work. When I was working Indian country crimes, which is on the Indian reservations, there's not really any need for a source. You're basically just a detective who goes out there and does major crime, but they still want you to have sources. So you might be a white collar fraud investigator, but they want you to keep a drug and gang source on simply to meet the metrics. So, always expanding the source network is sort of the way the FBI works. And it's really just meeting a metric and meeting sort of like a administrative box check as opposed to actually needing it. But they're putting people into outlaw motorcycle gangs, drugs and criminal gang organizations, fraudulent organizations that are out there, defrauding people's cash. They're going out after white supremacists if they can find them, which is pretty difficult. Actually, there's a far less white supremacists than the FBI would have you believe. But all these kinds of threats, they're domestic terror groups, and if there's a radical jihadi, but not churches,
but not churches. Not Catholic churches.
No, generally not. Certainly not.
Kyle, the Department of Justice has pulled back or disclaimed this memo, but it's really not enough. What needs to happen here? And I know there's a lot of talk on Capitol Hill about FBI reform. I've seen no plan. I've seen nothing that's really substantive, just more complaints about the behavior. What do you think needs to happen here?
I'm an abolitionist at this point. I think the badge is tarnished. I think that the FBI has tarnished the brand, and it doesn't have good standing with half of this country. They've been targeting half of this country, saying that they're domestic terrorists since January 6th. And if you've been inside the bureau and you see how aggressive those prosecutions are, even for petty misdemeanors, it's really, really disgusting. It doesn't mean that everybody in the FBI is bad, and I hope that many of them find other jobs somewhere. But I don't know if there's the political will for it. But at the very minimum, we should be pulling the domestic intelligence mission away from the bureau. It's too much power to put an intelligence agency and give them law enforcement capabilities.
Kyle Seraphin, thank you so much for exposing this and bringing it to everybody's attention and being with us today. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Tom.